Hello, and welcome to this week's Warbot stream. As always, we've got Mike,
Hi, everybody.
and we've got our DB guy, DB.
Yeah.
And as sometimes I am here.
So,
I come up with a thing that I say every time.
we
Get myself a shtick.
could see that working.
Keep winging for the fences.
Generic complaint about Perfect League.
Checks out.
I haven't looked at it today, but I'm sure something terrible's happened.
Sounds about right. All right, so yeah, I think our plan tonight is to talk a little bit about Gold Best of 7. DB's even promised that we're going to keep the stream to a reasonable amount of time. I guess we're going to find out. So, yeah, some overall thoughts. I guess maybe we should start, as usual, just with the overview, right?
That seems like a good place to start, yeah.
So, yeah, I guess the last time we talked, kind of in the middle in June, the last time we did this, it was a pretty right-handed meta, right? About 60-40. Also, 59% right-handed hitters, not a lot of switch hitters. And it was a little bit high scoring compared with some of the others, right? 4.99 ERA. And I guess there's not too much of a change, right? Maybe a few more lefties, still not a lot of switch hitters.
Pitching seems to have gotten a tiny bit better.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting. The extra base hits have dropped a lot.
Yeah, that's actually a huge difference, isn't it?
Yeah, almost 2/3. So I think we've gotten some guys with better outfield range, probably. I think maybe they're covering more ground now, or maybe we're playing more guys who have less gap power too. I guess I'm trying to think who the
No, because I was looking, I guess we've got at the top kind of some ratings
yeah.
for sort of what looked to be the players, at least the players at the top. So maybe the players that aren't at the top are kind of changing this a bit. But it looks pretty similar to the gold we saw before with one or two exceptions. I think the big difference is the hitters have a lot more eye without really having given anything up. I think that's what we've gotten for the newly released hitters. And maybe the pitching
More people have more people have Toby Hara. Maybe it must be what's and
you know,
his
that's also
150
possible.
eye or whatever.
Yep. And on the pitching side, pretty similar, but a little bit of a shift from control towards stuff. Which I guess is the opposite of what you want to do if there's more eye, now that I think about it. So maybe we'll see that swing back a little bit.
Always changing. We'll see.
You like to see shifts in the meta.
Yeah, no, I think
Kind of no matter what the format is.
yeah, that was kind of one thing I was going to say as a preface too. Is there are a lot of these new cards that were pretty interesting. A lot of the tourney special edition ones that I haven't seen much of yet, so we haven't really seen a lot of them in play to make an impact in the stats that we have observed. But they're out there, and eventually more people might be having them. It might change how things are looking.
Yeah, I think not only do we have some new cards released, but well, we'll see in a moment what the model says. Not a lot of them in the data yet. I think that's probably right. I've actually been surprised. I guess we'll come back to this a little later, but I've been surprised that a lot of the cards at the top, it does seem to be a little bit static. I don't think we've seen a huge change from what we're going to talk about in June, but I guess we can start with catchers and see how it goes, right?
It's hard to make cards better than Toby Hara, so that's where we are.
It's easy to make cards better than Toby Hara. They just shouldn't be gold.
Well, yeah. Right.
But you still have, but you can only play Toby Hara at one position at a time.
That's really the main downfall, yeah.
So, all right, should we do some catchers?
Look,
Let's see what we got. All right, so we'll start with the model. And the model, we've actually got a new number one. So we've got Muddy. Is it Ruel? Is that the right way to pronounce it? Or you think Rule?
Hmm. I like Muddy Rule.
Yeah, I had a
See,
pronunciation guide, but he didn't seem to be in there. So
His real name is Harold, Herold. He was
he
not
went
born
by
Muddy.
Muddy so that nobody would know that his parents spelled his name wrong.
Yeah.
So
Well, you know, when
are
you're
you trying to tell me Muddy was not his given name?
those fields weren't in great shape back in the 1910s, 1920s. You know, being a catcher down there in the dirt, you're going to end up muddy.
It's true. Um, anyway, so he's our new number one in the model. No observed data on him, or at least not enough to kind of measure anything. I don't know about your take. I just love the card. I went out and kind of put a lot of effort into getting one as soon as they were available.
Yeah, it's a wild card. Let's see, there were only two of them in the weekly last week. It looks like so. Um, there's not a whole lot of them out there yet. And yeah, just to say too, all this data is based off about like 50-ish best of sevens, and then the last two weeklies. So it's all since the most recent platinum release.
And then Kennedy's also a new release, right? Um,
Yeah, it's also new.
so Posey, I think, is
Um,
who we were looking at the last time we did this as being the top in the model. Muddy just looks like an excellent card, right? The one flaw is the power, but you get this enormous defense and a really playable bat both ways.
yeah,
So
and I think Terry Kennedy just missed the cutoff for plate appearances, but he's getting about in a smaller sample size. He's on pace for about 0.3 WAR per 100. So probably definitely earns that spot. Yeah.
the other thing about Muddy, which maybe isn't clear here, so Kennedy and Muddy both, it's a really catcher ability heavy instead of arm heavy defense. Uh, Kennedy's got a 90 catcher ability and Muddy's got a 92.
Let's see it.
So yeah, I think I'm running Muddy not just in gold, but I'm running him in almost every cap format at this point. It's tough because there have been a few other catchers released that are interesting as well for cap formats, like Lavalier in particular. But I'm currently running Muddy in almost everything.
Yeah, I would do the same if I had it. He's definitely not our budget pick. So
No, definitely not a budget pick. But yeah, it's close at least. I guess the other one that's close is if you have something like a Downing. It's not quite clear which one's more efficient. Maybe I'd still go Downing. But all right, let's see. What do we got for the data? We don't have Muddy
I
or
hope
Kennedy. Sorry, go ahead.
I hope to someday have to make that decision.
Fair enough. All right. So here's where we're at in the data. So Stanley, just with that huge bat, ends up really clearly on top of the data.
yeah, and he's even over on the left. It's already a spoiler. He's the number one card on winning teams. He's just pretty good. He's got a great bat.
Yeah, and it's a good enough bat that he can play first too. So I think you can play
Yeah.
Stanley with someone like Muddy and have no problems there.
He's
Absolutely.
also relatively accessible, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
Um, yeah, he's definitely affordable as well. So let's see. I'm a little surprised to see the build a lineup Mauer up there too.
I mean, he's the only reasonable left-handed, well, other than Terry Kennedy, who's very new and we don't have data yet. Mauer has been the kind of de facto left-handed hitting catcher in Gold for some time. So
Okay, that's true.
I'm expecting that this would be like a full platoon, really only hitting against right-handed starters kind of deal.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense if it's a platoon bat. And then
Yeah.
Farrell's also a card that's up there in the model. So a few other cards the model would say to look at. Farrell would end up fourth. The somewhat newer release Russell Martin with just the huge catcher ability. Stanley. Let's see, Wes Westrom, Johnny Kling, and Lavalier actually does end up in the top 10. Also a left-handed hitting catcher, but you're not really playing him for the bat. And then I guess Darren Dalton too. Sort of the opposite, right? Good left-handed bat, but doesn't have the glove you want behind the plate.
Yeah, I don't think I've even seen that Dalton yet.
100% Rumps approved. Run the Dalton.
Dalton
he's in
also
there.
plays, I think, right and maybe one other outfield position. You can kind of move him around a bit. But I don't think the
Yeah.
bat's quite good enough unless you're going to play him at catcher.
No, yeah, I think there's not a huge delta between a lot of the second best catcher options. I think you kind of almost definitely want to run Stanley for the bat, but after that, there's options. Mauer is definitely the most accessible, but
Well, Dalton here, I'll put him up for a sec because Dalton actually has a huge bat. It's a little different shape than someone like Stanley. Lower control, more eye. But probably overall, this is a card that's going to hit about as well as Stanley. It's just that Stanley's a much more credible catcher defensively.
Gold floor, though.
That's true. Gold floor, I think I'd love to run Dalton. So can a Phillies theme team be successful in Gold? Yeah, there are a few new releases, right?
there's the LE Bobby Abreu.
Yeah.
Willie Jones, the silver, he's Philly.
I don't know if you're going to get enough pitching, but I think you probably could put a pretty good lineup together.
It's not no. You could be pretty good.
Let's see. Yeah. All right, let's see. So Warbot actually just likes Muddy both ways, and I think that's one of the nice things about the card is better against lefties, 12 points of eye, but really you're playing him for the combination of a credible bat and a really good catcher ability, and he can do that both ways.
Yeah, and he's pretty splitless. Like I would say, yeah, better, but that's nice. I'll take it all day.
Let's see. As you mentioned, your biggest winner is Stanley. So if you're on a budget, Muddy right now is really expensive. Kennedy's really expensive. I think you couldn't go wrong with a card like Posey, who's reasonably cheap. But I think our budget pick, because he also plays first and just is going to help you with the roster construction, is Mike Stanley.
Yeah, and I think when I was trying to put together a new Gold team, since I hadn't really messed with it too much since the last stream we did 2 months ago, I definitely think the roster flexibility is a huge consideration. It helps to be able to run. It seems like a lot of people, I think, the most common was 12 pitchers, but a lot of teams run 13 too. Some people use openers and stuff. So getting as much as you can out of your roster spots and being able to platoon is super important. So yeah.
That sounds right. And I was running Posey and Stanley for a while. Like I said, I picked up Muddy, and now I'm just running him kind of as much as I can. And then I've got Stanley on the roster as a backup catcher and first baseman. What are you running? Okay, you are running the Posey and Stanley platoon, it looks like.
Yeah, and there's a couple of those new SEs I would rather have, but I don't have them yet. But yeah, just to preface with gold too. I mean, we talk about it can be kind of unattainable with all these really hard to get, expensive, limited or special edition cards. But no one, as far as I know, has all of them. So you can put together a pretty competitive team. It's not going to be the absolute most optimized, but you can get pretty far with the second and third best options.
My sense would be that Durden has an awful lot of them.
He's trying. Don't sell your things to Durden. Sell some to us.
Every time I look in the buy and sell channel on the main Discord, he's in there asking someone to please sell him a tournament edition gold card. So if anyone has them all, he does.
Got to get on that grind.
I've got a few of them for the cap tournaments as well, but I'm not kind of spamming gold. So
maybe you should be. Get your money back.
I mean, another thing to point out is we're talking about these two tournament cards as if they're both equally expensive, and they're really not. The last 10 on Muddy might not even be meaningful because there, I think, may have only been one sale. But the last 10 on Muddy's in the 6 figures. Last 10 on Kennedy's $18K.
Yeah, there might have only been one sale on Kennedy too, so I don't know, maybe a couple.
Could be, but I do think that there's a pretty big difference in terms of how expensive the two are.
Yeah, Kennedy is much less obviously broken than Muddy, but it's a good card. I think if it's a nice niche, if you can get one.
Yeah. It'll also be interesting to see with these changes they mentioned for stolen bases. I wonder whether Catcher Arm's going to start to come into play a little bit differently.
Yeah, that's something I was thinking about as well. That could... I'm going to say, off the top of my head, I don't think too many of the very popular cards in gold are very fast. I don't think it's really like at least not a common strategy right now.
You say that, but you know that people are going to be out like the first time it's available with the new rules. Just like the spots with Pole's team. Right? Here we go.
Yeah, well, there are definitely gold cards that you can play that'll run. But it sounded like the big change was going to be that the players a little bit lower down in speed were going to be more runnable.
Yeah, there's a couple guys guys in the 90 range. There's Bobby Bonds, Joe Morgan, Marquise Grissom. Those are all borderline playable. If stealing becomes more effective as a tool to get runs in, then yeah, I could definitely see some shakeup.
I'll be honest, I haven't really thought about it.
Surprisingly good at stealing for a catcher. Still only 60, but almost at the level you could play it.
Takes one to know one, right?
Yeah.
I haven't really thought about it from a tournament perspective, right? Like I read the news and the only thing I thought was, oh, they've decided that the game would be better if Cool Papa Bell wasn't the only person allowed to steal bases.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I'll be really interested to see how that shakes things up. Because there are going to be some knock-on effects if that does wind up happening, right? Because the lower power, higher speed and stealing and base running players tend to also to lean harder into defense. So we could see some changes, some pretty significant metagame changes.
Yeah, it should be interesting. The other thing is the war calculations end up kind of funny, both with the base running. Well, I guess actually that's the thing to mention with Stanley also, is to be a little careful here, because sometimes that war is being calculated for a player to mixture catcher and first base, but as if he's catching all those innings.
Right.
Yeah. Out of the Park Baseball does not handle multi-position stats or counting stats for players that play multiple defensive positions very well.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's what's going on with the Mauer there too. Is I wonder if he's getting a bump from playing first base.
Yeah, he might be getting more. I don't know. I feel like catchers get a bit more of a.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, all
It's
right. Speaking of first base.
Speaking of first base,
Yeah. Speaking of first base, another place that you can
Let's
play
keep-
Mike Stanley.
Let's keep talking about the Mike Stanley hour.
All right. So back to the model. This really hasn't changed a lot since the last time we talked. John Morrill is still an 82 overall card that really feels like he should be a perfect. 104i, not a huge split. You can play him at second. You can play him at third.
You
Yeah,
can.
and he's no longer available. So if you don't have one, you're not going to be able to get him in a tournament anymore. And actually, the same is true of our other top two, the rest of the top three in the model, right? You can no longer get copies of any of these cards.
Well, I mean, you can. They're just going to be very expensive, right?
Or sorry, you can no longer get a new copy of any of these cards.
You can't pack any of them for sure, and you can't. Right. So if you want these cards in particular, you can probably get them if you go to Discord and make it clear that you're willing to pay something of a premium. But good luck otherwise.
So an interesting question then. So we know there are exactly 100 McGriffs in the game.
Yep.
Now that the tournament cards have been rotated out, do we think there are more than 100 or fewer than 100 Morals and Guerreros?
I would guess fewer. I think they have, like, they can pull stats on that, right? Like, they've definitely answered questions in the past about, like, for example, how many of X have been packed. So,
let's get.
I think it'd be really interesting.
Let's bug Dish or Nicolino to get on the case and figure that out because we want to know.
All right. I'll just ask chat. Just we'll get a few estimates and we'll crowdsource it, right? How many Pedro Guerreros do you think are out there in the wild?
How many of which gold? I guess we got to talk about the.
I was going to say no more.
The tournament special edition. That's true.
Yeah.
There's a platinum as well. That's not.
It's also the same year, so it's very confusing. But
I was going to guess no more than 60.
Wait, that's true. They're both 1985 Pedro Guerreros, but one's a first baseman and one's a left fielder.
What?
Hey, I didn't make the rules.
That is a little weird.
In my data sample, there's 23 different teams that have played the SC Pedro Guerrero. So I got to think there's at least 23.
Okay, so probably maybe there are 30 to 50 available or something in total.
Yeah, I would assume like 50 to 60 maybe. Because if you get the weeklies where there would be 4 of each gold card distributed probably, so probably been a tournament reward 10 or 12 times. I don't know.
So that's something to think about when you're kind of doing the card shop stuff. Is that generally these tournament rewards are probably going to be more limited than the 100 limited editions. And I guess that means the diamond and above, because you only get one at a time, are probably more limited than the 25s, right?
Yeah.
I think
it's
that's interesting.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm surprised I guess there's just enough different cards in rotation that the silver rewards have held their value very well. They're still going for quite a lot of points. So I would think, based on previous years, I figured there would be a point where there's so many in the game that people wouldn't be paying up for them. But
the silvers, I guess, you don't get them in the dailies, but when you get them 8 at a time.
Right. Oh yeah, that's true. Right.
So maybe they're more like 100, say, Crux in the game.
Yeah. That's probably right.
Anyway.
What do we got in the data?
Right, data. So where are we at in the data? So the model still loves Moral. Of course, the model really loves anyone with I. Data also loves Pedro, also loves Moral. And this Steve Garvey's kind of interesting, right? No I,
Yeah, that was
but does everything
that was
else.
one that stood out, and it's not a terribly small sample size, but I think maybe he plays another position. Is that
Well,
why
I
he's
think the
getting?
I think the big thing with Garvey is he's got huge splits. So you're
Yeah,
getting an extra 12 points of contact, 17 of power, 11 of avoid K, and 6 of I against lefties. So he's probably a platoon bat, and maybe that's where that's coming from.
must be. Yeah,
Um,
but yeah, I was surprised to see him big resurgence, crushing it. So
Durden's asking about the sliders. I don't know. Is there a slider for intentional walks with 2 strikes?
there is the Tony La Russa global strategy, like importable preset in the game, but
Well, that's
Are
true.
I
you, are
tried
you
it.
suggesting that there might be some hidden settings in some of those presets?
Well, I don't know. I don't think it's accurate because I loaded it and my team won. So I don't think it's very realistic to the LaRussa experience.
Yep. Let's see. Oh, right. If you're going to platoon, so Warbot just points out that Moral really has no split, so you can play him both ways. Um, but really, any of these cards is excellent. The problem is just that they're not available, right? So the biggest winner, not
Right now, they
surprisingly,
might be
isn't
back
any of
later.
these. What?
I was saying they might be back later. Dish did say they weren't going to be permanently removed. So in a couple
Yeah,
months, we'll
although
have a gold wonderland again.
Although you assume that if there's some power creep, then even some of the more powerful earlier tournament cards probably won't play as much later.
True, true.
Um,
Speaking, Mr. Black, of retiring the car, I no longer play out of the park baseball. I'm now an F1 manager player. Um, goodbye, everybody.
yep.
No, I'm kidding. I don't get paid enough to play F1 manager.
Let's see. All right, right. So the biggest winner then, just because of availability, let me find that. The biggest winner is actually Hank Greenberg, which is a really good card. Maybe a bit of a platoon split there. And I think there are a few others that we could mention if you go down the list. Harry Davis, for example, is packable. There's a new Gil Hodges that's probably playable. There's the Cavaretta that came out, I guess, in the PTCS, but is now a tournament card. You could even play Kruk here. And there's a Jim Bottomley that I was really excited about when I saw him come out, but maybe is more of a platoon bat now.
Yeah, great platoon bat. I got him in a perfect draft the other day, and I was like, "Oh, this is a fun card." Yeah, lots of like the again first base. The gap isn't too huge. I think there's probably half a dozen options that have had pretty decent success.
Yeah, I love Bottomley in Perfect Draft because it's such a right-handed meta that you can really get away with essentially a platoon bat and just play him and hope you get the right draw.
Yeah,
So Bottomley in the model comes out, let's see, 8th overall. But
ironically near the
if
top.
you give me a second, I check him as a platoon bat, I'm sure he's going to be much higher.
They should call him Jim Topley.
Let's see. I'm just checking the platoon split on him. Okay, no, I'm a little surprised. He doesn't. Oh, hold on. That's because I have the. That's because I'm looking at the wrong side, isn't it? So surprisingly enough, on the bad side of the platoon, he really doesn't come out very good in the model. No, it only comes out sixth, and I guess that's because McGriff is super splitty, Cavaretta is somewhat splitty, Kruk, is really splitty and jumps ahead of a bunch of these guys. So I guess he's actually not as splitty as some of the left-handed options that are available.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, just again, comes back to roster construction wise. Most of the right-handed first basemen are great and don't really need to be platooned. So there's not a huge need to fit a
Yeah.
lefty in there when you can probably be better off platooning a different position.
So all right, budget. Well, this is actually a pretty easy choice because there's really only one card that's at all competitive with these that that is packable. Or we can go with Stanley, but Harry Davis is just a perfectly good first baseman in terms of the bat.
Yeah, and Greenberg's one of the live reward missions too, so he's totally gettable too.
That's true. He's also pretty.
Maybe are you still running Harry Davis in Perfect League?
No, I pulled a Gehrig, unfortunately. His time finally came to an end.
Yeah.
But I will stand by that
he was like three WAR or something like the last time.
He's incredible. I mean, he's had until King Kelly. Actually, I think Kelly was what drove him out of the lineup because until then, I'm pretty sure he had the highest gap power of anybody. So that was a fun play.
I went out and got a Gehrig, but mine seems to be broken at the moment. So.
Yeah, well, it was unfortunate that I'm a sentimental fool. So.
All right. So what do we actually?
I like winning. It's more fun to win with the cards that no one else is using.
The point of that anecdote is that like this card is good enough to play in Perfect League. Surely it is good enough to play on your Gold Best of 17.
Absolutely. All right, so what are we running? Well, we're both just running Moral. Yeah, he's got 104 and 105 I. He gets on base. He has a little bit of power.
Yeah, Moral was the first tourney SC that I won on that team, so that was a cool win. But he's also never been as expensive as like the Pedro Guerrero and some of the other like really crazy.
Yeah, he's
six-figure,
at least in terms
L10 ones.
In terms of price, one of the, like a second tier gold tournament edition card.
Yeah,
like, not in terms of value necessarily, but just raw price.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's someone you could, if you wanted to play gold tournaments, you could buy him and not like hate yourself.
Makes sense.
Not for that reason, at least.
And Moral also, I know the two of you are not a fan of this, but he really does play both second and third. We were just talking last week about how you can sort of punt third base defense at the moment in a lot of cases. If you're willing to do that, you can get this bat and a third baseman too.
I bet he plays better second base defense than Edgar Martinez.
Yeah. Well, I'm not completely sure. Hold on. What's Edgar's infield range?
I don't know, but he committed 2 errors in 7 innings for me. So, 8 innings.
Because Moral does have a 58 range, which is probably not quite what you want in your middle infielder.
I don't think his stats are very different than Edgar's, really. So that's fine. Do whatever you want.
Yeah, I can see it working.
Up to the second baseman and see if are you playing Moral there?
Now I'm playing Moral at first. So okay, so second base. Okay.
He's playing Monjoral at second base.
So second base, just like last time, Toby Harrah is still really good. I think we're going to be saying that a lot when it comes to the infield that Toby Harrah is just really good. 108 I, that becomes 125 on the good side of his split. sporting a 390 WOBA in your data, winning, 1 out of every 13 tournaments. If you can get yourself Toby Hara, you want to play Toby Hara somewhere for sure. Right?
That sounds correct.
And Sandberg's also no longer available, but the new Johnny Evers is. So I guess that's the only one of these cards that's newly being produced, right?
Yeah, and that one's doing okay so far. In the data, it seems like a, totally viable pick. I like it.
Yeah, I think especially, if you're going to punt something, punting power is still pretty viable here.
Mm-hmm.
No, Sandberg is in the tournament set that just disappeared. In fact, I think that's one of the things we've kind of been seeing so far is that this first tournament set didn't get replaced across the board. There were some positions where really good cards came out in the new tournament edition cards. But there are a lot of places where you really still need the older cards as well if you're going to compete. Yeah, let's see. Evers. The Gold Morgan is a really good card. So the Gold Morgan ends up, kind of just behind here. Let me find the... Evers is also interesting because he's a little bit more splitty. So let's see. What do we got in the data? So we have... There it is. So probably not too surprisingly, Toby Hara is also doing really well in the data. We got our, Michael Young.
He is fixed in the game now. He's the artist formerly known as Mike.
Oh, they actually fixed it? Oh, I'm so glad.
And we got Joe Morgan as well.
Yeah.
And Young's winning 1 out of every 12 tournaments. So definitely a lot of sharp managers running him as well, right? He's also, just like Hara, he's really good for flexibility. And actually, so is Sandberg. Sandberg does play third. And if you're running someone like Matthews at third on one side, it's not crazy to think about throwing Sandberg there.
No.
You're just trying to justify playing Ryan Sandberg more, aren't you?
Well, who was it that was asking earlier about whether you could get a Phillies theme team going in gold? He's definitely eligible for your Phillies theme team.
It was Fycross asking about that. Who else would it be?
It surely was.
It probably was, yeah. No, I think we got a few Phillies fans in here, right?
There are dozens of them. Dozens.
Let's see. All right, so if you're going to run a platoon, for the first time we don't have Hara both ways, because Johnny Evers just ends up even a little bit better against righties here. You're still getting the better defense, and at least to Warbot, you can just get away without the power if you're good enough at everything else.
Mr. Black thinks Michael Young is getting fat off of John Candelarias to put him up high on the data.
It is a good matchup for him, isn't it? All right, let's see. So who's our biggest winner here? Because again, not a lot of these cards are available. And so that means our biggest winner is in fact Mr. Young on 62% of winning rosters. So, and definitely an easy card to use for roster construction.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely, well, spoiler alert, he's one of my choices. But I'm only really, I guess I have him at second versus left, but it's just way too handy having him being able to back up every position in the infield. Really frees you up for platoons and stuff. And
how dare you spoil the thing we were going to find out in 30 seconds?
Yeah, well, this is definitely why
How
this is
could you
definitely
do
why
that
I'm
to our
playing Moral
viewers?
at first, is because all of these guys play every position, which does help. Um, I think if you're going to play Young, though, his best position is pretty clearly second. If you just kind of look at what he's got defensively, so 75 range, 78 turn double play, kind of makes him okay at second and better than some of the other bats we were talking about. Only a 69 arm at third, and definitely doesn't have the range for short. And not really the bat to play first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was never really known for his arm in real life, was he?
No,
Where
no,
is
but
Chase? What does the model? What does the model think of Chase Utley? Let's just get this out of the way.
what does the model think of Chase Utley? All right, so if we go down past Evers, well, fourth in the model, as I think everybody knows, and only slightly behind Evers is of course going to be George Grantham, because Warbot's never going to turn down 100i,
Of course, of
anywhere.
course.
Uh, then we got the build a
This
lineup
this show
Morgan. What?
this show may or may not be sponsored by George Grantham's mother.
Or Donnie Bush. It could be either, right?
That's fair.
Um, yeah. Then Morrill, Jack Crooks, and then Utley. And Crooks is also an interesting card. I'll just put that one up real quick.
That puts Utley at 7.
George Grant.
8, it looks like. Yeah, I got Utley at 8. So
8.
here's this new Jack Crooks card. This is clearly a Warbot special. All I can say
Yeah.
is this is clearly a Warbot special, right?
Warbot is drunk
Yeah.
on eye again.
Robots can't really drool, but they could.
Warbot is leaking some type of fluid, and
I mean,
we're not really
pretty
sure what
much,
it is.
pretty much any time that you have a better eye than Toby Hara, Warbot's going to get interested, right? I mean,
Right.
the main problem with this card is I know that defense says 84 at second base, but it's only 69 range. It's 81 error and 87 turn double play. And then he's eligible at third base, but only has 52 arm. If he had a little more defense, I think Warbot would like him better than Grantham. But unfortunately, this is a high I card that even Warbot doesn't seem to want to endorse.
Yeah, in the observed data, he's not like great, but I mean, he gets on base. So
No, I think
if that's your,
I think the
that's your
model.
MO.
Yeah, looking at this model, Warbot kind of against one set of pitchers has him at a 171 average with a 374 OBP, 270 slugging.
Yeah, he's got a 379 OBP in 800 or so PAs in my observed. So,
And but is he hitting? But is he hitting below the Mendoza line?
I didn't look at the average, but I mean, yeah, he's not doing that great.
Yeah, because that's what Warbot has him at. Warbot has him as just over 200 points of isolated OBP.
Yeah, he's walking more than everyone not named Toby Hara, but that's about all he does.
Yeah. So, like I said, I wish I could endorse Crooks. I do love that there are cards like that in the game. And, I could actually imagine that Crooks in some of these eras, if you play one of these dead ball things where suddenly there's no power, I guess you want more BABIP, but I'd almost be tempted to run him in like 1880 or something.
I've always loved him as a card for caps and stuff. His card last year was pretty similar. It's just fun to run the mill deck strategy and hope he just sees every
Man,
pitch.
I've never thought of the burn their pitchers as the mill deck, but it totally is.
that sort of, yeah, I mean, I really want to try that on an alt. Just, sort by eye, see what happens. Let's see. All right. So as for a real budget pick, I think there are a few options that we could mention, but it's Warbot. George Grantham's really cheap, and he's just good, and you can play him in gold.
This message you brought to you by Miss Grantham, who, let's see, George Grantham was born in 1900 in Galena, Kansas. So I'm thinking we don't want to piss off his mom, so let's keep mentioning him.
Seems correct.
Wait, Galena, Kansas.
Yeah, I didn't even know that existed.
I've been to Galena, Illinois.
Yeah, there's actually a smaller
Kansas
Galena.
as well?
It's never good when you're the second most well known.
Yeah, but and neither is a source of Galena, right? Like the mineral.
Not anymore. Or it might still be, but they're not mining it anymore.
Oh well. Anyway, right.
I
Who
guess
are we
we stopped
actually
using
running
the ban or
here?
whatever.
Yeah. So who are we running? Here we go. We got 4 different options between us, so that's always fun. So I'm running a platoon of Toby Hara and Ryan Sandberg. I think we've talked about those. You want to say something about Hudson? Because that's one we haven't discussed yet.
Yeah, I mean he's just he's there. I don't have anything bad to say about Orlando Hudson. He's a solid option. I probably want to get a Johnny Evers now, but he's not like that much better. So,
I guess Evers is a little splitty.
yeah. Hudson's one I would definitely like to replace my second base on this team, but I just haven't scored one of those sweet tournament edition guys yet. So,
but most importantly, you did upgrade your Mike Young to a Michael Young recently.
yes. That was really what turned it around for the capybaras. Yeah.
It's a big upgrade, right?
Yeah.
Well, see, Mike Young got on the phone with Roy Patterlow and was like, "Hey,
Yeah.
what do I do about this?
Yeah.
I don't feel like myself, man. How do I get through this?"
Oh yeah, you know what? I think why I've stuck with Hudson is because of his defense. Besides, I guess like Granny Hamner or Rabbit, who still is around, but I mean his bat is just a limp noodle. His defense is great. So if you're not, if you're getting some ground balls, you might want someone who can field them, right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's second base.
All right. Should we do some
Let's
third
keep the
base?
Toby Hara train going on to third base.
Sure. So third base, where instead of Toby Hara, we now have Toby Hara.
Bias Hara.
But now we've got a new card jumping up all the way from silver. We've got this David Wright at number 3.
Oh, wow.
So, and it's really close between him and Vern Stevens, kind of for that third spot. I don't know. Is this Wright a card that you've looked at much?
I haven't looked. I won one, and I haven't looked at it yet. Really, I haven't tried playing silver for a while, but I didn't even think about him being viable in gold.
So, yeah, I ended up picking one up just to run in kind of silver and some caps. But it's kind of just a really nicely shaped card.
No one has used him so far in my observed data in gold, so you could be the first if you want to do so.
I can certainly see the thinking behind not using him, right? I mean, it's kind of a funny card because he's not. It's not that the card kind of jumps out at you and kind of screams that you need to be running him, but he's just sort of decent at everything and has like about the right shape, and then that 77 defense is exactly the right shape as well. Um,
Mhm.
it's 88 arm in there. So he's kind of playing above what you'd expect to play for those numbers.
Yeah, I don't hate it.
So yeah, I could definitely see that working. A couple other options to mention. So Vern Stevens is fourth. Pedro Guerrero is up there. The new platinum Edgardo Alfonso is a really interesting card. Chase Headley, just as a switch hitter, I kind of keep wanting to pick that tournament and that guy in drafts, and it never quite works out. And then kind of some of the cards we've talked about before: Sal Bando, Willie Jones, really is a platoon guy. Howard Johnson even kind of can come up. Um, so yeah, a few options. Let's see where we're at in the data. Well, pretty similar, except we've got Bob Bailey up here.
Yeah, Bob just keeps on ticking, man.
We're never going to get rid of that guy. And again,
It's
as
true.
always, the 75, not the 74.
That's right, the 75 Bob Bailey. The model
We will
doesn't
never
like
talk about the
Davis.
74 Bob
The model
Bailey.
doesn't like Davis at third, but does like him a lot more at short. He ends up fourth at short. He beats out Donnie Bush at short, which should really tell you something, right? That's hard to do in a Warbot model. I still am guessing a lot of the Bob Bailey numbers are probably at DH, right?
I would hope so.
I also
Kind of
would
got
hope
a
so.
trash can for a glove, so. But he does. I mean, for not being particularly good at any of them, it is. He's got the flexibility to play first, third, and left. So usually those aren't as important in needing backups as other positions. Usually, a lot of other guys can cover those positions, but if you end up with a build where you need a backup first and lefty, and you don't have one, like, hey, fine. It's
Yeah,
cool to see two silvers up here in our top performers.
yeah. I think a few of these really are playable. So
Yeah, and he is squeaking in there with a small sample size. Definitely platoon only, I would assume. But still smashes the ball. So what can you do?
yeah, I think just looks playable, doesn't he? Um, yeah, I think
He has a small sample size in the observed too, but Willie Jones, the silver SE, also sneaks up there too. He just missed the cutoff, but
yeah, and the model still thinks he's really playable as a platoon bat.
yeah,
Let's see
yeah.
your
In
ideal
the
platoon. So go ahead. Yeah.
I was just saying, in the observed, Willie was fourth, and then George Davis was fifth. I saw someone was asking about George Davis at third. So
Okay. Yeah. So your ideal platoon, according to Warbot, which just makes sense, is Matthews and Hera. Hera has even more eye against lefties, and Matthews just absolutely clobbers righties. So I think that's pretty straightforward if you've got both. Let's see. Our biggest winner here. Huh. I guess that's just availability, but it's actually the build a lineup Wade Boggs.
Yeah, no, that makes
yeah,
sense.
it's funny. He's just outside the top choices there, and it's not a huge drop off to him.
Yeah, and outside of Eddie Matthews, I think he's sort of the default lefty third baseman. So, makes a good amount of sense if you're platooning third base.
Yeah, not a lot of people have Eddie Matthews. Um, Again, there's probably less than 100 of those around, so
Yeah,
yeah, Boggs is going to be as good as you can do most of the time.
that's fair. I mean, a few of these guys are two-sided as well, but I think that's right. I think you kind of need to find You need to find one of these expensive cards at a few positions like this to really compete. And I think this is probably one of them, where you can see there's a really big gap between what you're getting out of Boggs and what you're getting out of kind of all the cards on the board here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
would be
like
pretty nice.
if you can't get Bob Bailey, don't even show up to gold.
Okay, that's true. You can get Bob Bailey, but I assume you don't want Bob Bailey to be your verse right third baseman.
Let's hope not.
Not even if it's the 75 instead of the 74. Okay,
I'm waiting for a Twinsies tournament where like in that tournament and in that tournament only, you must play multiple copies of the same player.
Johnny Johnson is going to have a field day.
I'd like to have one where I can play all the Kevin Browns.
I'm sorry, all the Kevin's Brown.
Yes. All right. So for budget third baseman, I think the best we've come up with here is actually that the Sal Bando that you get from the missions is still pretty playable.
Yeah, definitely a platoon. Again, I mean, he's not terrible versus right, but like he's really good.
Gold Floor All-Star too.
That's true. Gold Floor it's an excellent card. So all right, who are we actually running here? Well, so this is where I'm running Hera on the other side, and I am running Matthews and Hera. So I'm running Hera basically as a split platoon so that I can run Matthews on one side and Sandberg the other. And then what are you doing here? Let me see.
Good question.
You actually are running George Davis, who we just got the question about in the chat, right?
Yeah. And that was just kind of trying out something new instead of Boggs. Or wait, no, I'm using Boggs versus left. Never mind. Yeah, just trying out. This came down to the roster construction that I didn't have space to platoon third base fully, and I needed someone to back up shortstop. So yeah, I ended up with Davis. Again, the positional flexibility just makes it a big difference.
Let's see. So this new Ezra Sutton, we got a question about. Really doesn't end up kind of anywhere close in the model. I'm just trying to see how far down. Yeah, it really doesn't end up anywhere close in the model.
I didn't even notice that card existing.
So it's a funny shape. It's a huge BABIP, 106 BABIP. So he's going to get hits. No power, but some gap power. Yeah, I'm actually a little bit surprised that Warbot doesn't like that card a little better. You know, it's not 0-I, and the third base defense is at least acceptable.
Yeah, it's a fun one. It's definitely great for dead ball era tournaments. That would absolutely destroy it.
Yeah, and it's also kind of splitless. So in that era, you can run him both ways as well.
Yep, and Fab makes a good point. He's 80 overall, so he is totally free for Gold Floor.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that card doesn't end up higher. I'm trying to see if I can figure out why. Actually, it looks like maybe the defense isn't the right shape as well. So you're getting a lot of singles and doubles, not a lot of walks. Yeah, I still expect that card's playable in the right format though. So I think that's a good point.
He's fun. My only complaint about the card is it has the modern Braves logo on it when he was a Boston Bean Eater.
Wait, why does that have the modern Braves logo? All right, well.
That's a shame.
All right, should we go on to shortstop?
Oh, yeah. Next up on the Toby Hara Award Tour.
Continuing with Toby Hara, our best shortstop in the model is not Toby Hara.
What?
He's number 2.
I was told that was impossible.
He's number 2, but the new Vern Stevens, even better.
Dang.
And yeah, I think looking at the bat on that card combined with a really playable glove. I mean,
Yeah, it's the glove that really does it.
I've wanted a good Vern Stevens for a while, just as a Red Sox fan, and this is a really good one. He's got 84 range, so maybe not ideal at shortstop, but competitive with all the bat first ones we've been talking about. He also plays a really solid third base. So you can still even use him sort of for roster construction. A little better against lefties. You could even, do what I'm doing with Hera, and you could platoon him with Eddie Matthews at third one way and then play him short the other way or something.
It's just a ridiculously good card. There's a buy order up on it for over 175,000. Yeah, L10's 185.
Still a hard card to get, but I think that just means that managers out there agree with us on how good the card is, right?
Recognized game.
This is the kind of card that, we don't endorse that sort of thing, but if you're the creative managing type, this is the kind of card that you'd consider creatively managing for, I suppose.
Tony Larusa your way to success of one form or another.
I have nothing to say about this. I don't want to get in trouble with anybody for expressing opinions.
Yeah.
I think maybe the best indirect answer I can give is that on this issue I belong to the Herm Edwards school of thought.
I also consider it a fortuitous event, if I happen to get knocked out for a reward I really want, but I'm simple. I just want to win. If someone's going to let me win a round in a draft or in a weekly or something, I'll take the win.
Yep.
Get those points.
But there have definitely been rounds where I've gotten knocked out and haven't been too broken up over it. Let's see. So Tulowitzki, is a platoon. Certainly, you want to platoon Tulo if you're going to play him. I assume you're talking about the Platinum Tulo, not the mission reward, right? So the 83 overall. At least my take is that's much more of a DH bat, though. The glove just isn't nearly good enough to play short. And also, Toby Hara, the glove's not great at short.
It's a really good bat, but yeah, just...
It is a really good bat.
You do not want him in the field.
But I think you'd rather DH him, if at all possible.
Pretty much anyone in my observed data, he's got the worst zone rating whenever he has been forced out into existing in defense.
Yeah. I think the more interesting question with Tulo is, in a meta which is still almost 60% right-handed, are you willing to use a roster spot to DH him one way? Is the bat actually good enough to do that? And it might be. It's at least close. A couple other options outside the top 3. George Davis ends up 4th in the model. Donnie Bush is 5th. The Bill Dolan and Tulo from Platinum 1. The A-Rod from Platinum 2, and the Bill to line up Ripken, Billy Rigel. So few options in there. Let's see what the data have. So we actually have enough Vern Stevens data to tell you we like Vern Stevens here too, it looks like. And Hara, I think Hara would do fine if people played him at short, but he's just so much better as a second and third baseman. I don't think you want to play Hara at short if you've got one. Or do you guys play Hara at short?
No, I would. He's not my pick because I don't have one, but I would.
No, I want to say I play Hera at third,
Yeah.
platooned with Eddie Matthews. I'm sorry, I will see myself out.
No, that's what I'm doing. I'm platooning him with Matthews one way and with Sandberg the other way. So, right, okay. Warbot thinks if you've really got them both, you can platoon, Vern with Toby because, again, Toby against left, that 125i is always gonna look great. But really, he's maybe the best shortstop, but he's even more so the best second baseman and third baseman. So I think you want to play him one of those. Biggest winner again. Not a lot of these cards are widely available. So who's our biggest winner here? Oh, it's JJ Hardy.
That's amazing.
Yep, and you'll find that's my choice too. I'm playing JJ Hardy.
Hardy's a really solid packable card. Huge defense. Good enough bat that he's not going to really hurt you. Can play him both ways. Not quite sure, he's at the caliber of some of the other ones we were talking about, but I don't own a Vern, so
yeah, short of Vern or Granny, maybe. I'm personally, I wouldn't be willing to sacrifice going down from 90 something defense at shortstop versus Hardy's 101. I think there's still a pretty big difference between that and like someone who's around 75.
Yeah.
So
he's a
kind of
again
as good as you can do.
Yeah, he's a perfect good budget pick too. But I think at this point you can do a little better with the packable George Davis. He's not going to be too far behind the top guys in the model. He's almost identical to where Granny Hamner is in the model. You can see he's doing fine in the stats as well. Does play a little bit of third base if you need. So, yeah, I think that works. And what are we running? So I know we've talked about all of these, expensive cards and, and a Warbot top 10 and all that, but I'm actually just running JJ Hardy both ways. And what are you doing here?
Take a guess.
You are also running JJ Hardy both ways.
Yeah. Well, when one of us can get one of those 3 Vern Stevens that are in existence, apparently, maybe that will change. But for now, yeah.
Makes sense. Oh, I'll definitely... I would definitely be very happy to get myself a Vern Stevens. But yeah, barring that, I think JJ Hardy's fine. So, let's see, is the defensive Davis or Hera that much better than Tulo? I think so. So I can pull him up real quick. So Davis, you're getting, 72 range, 97 turn double play, 86 error, right?
Tulo's got 71 range, and he's a 65 rating at shortstop.
Yeah. So it is a pretty significant difference. And then Hera only has a 60 rating at shortstop, but does actually have a 72 range. So I think you're still going to do better from Hera as well. At least ideally.
Yeah, if you're going to do that, I would just say you got to run a bunch of high strikeout, high fly ball pitchers and hope no one ever gets it on the ground.
Pretty much. All right, should we go to the outfield?
Yeah. Yeah, we should almost talk about left and right field kind of together.
Yeah, they're pretty similar.
Many of the top cards are pretty ambidextrous as far as which side of the field they play on.
Ambifieldorous.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is funny because you do actually want thing a little different, right? In right field, you care a little more about arm, for example. But all right, what do we got here? So left field, we've actually got a new number one in Charlie Keller. So, and this is a card that I really like the shape of. Little bit of a platoon split, but plays really
Yeah.
solid defense. Has some pop, decent eye. It's just
Decent eye and no
That's a,
avoid Ks just has Charles written all over it.
that's a
it
Warbot
does.
special right there.
Absolutely does. Let's see. Beyond the top three, Pedro Guerrero, this new George Selkirk, Wally Moon, Chuck Klein, the Platinum one, Jason Bay. We got Gavi, Calavito. So some of the usual suspects, but at least Keller and Galen are new enough to kind of change the meta here, I think. I haven't seen a lot of Galens floating around, actually. I've seen a couple Kellers. It looks like from sales that there are some Galens, though, right?
See.
Um, let's see.
We've got
Pinson.
500 plate appearances for Keller and 1,500 for Galen. So Galen does show up in the data, but he's just pretty low down there actually on the WAR. So
Yeah, I wonder if it's because he's a little splitty.
yeah, and as mentioned, he'd be good for low gold for sure because he's a bit lower.
His
He's an
Keller
84,
card I
so-
absolutely love, though. And Abreu, if I could find an Abreu, that's exactly the shape I'd like to get.
Yeah.
Let's see, who are we asking about? Ryan Braun just misses the top 10, sort of in left field in the model. And then, what was the other one we asked about? Oh, Pinson? I think Pinson's going to work better as a center fielder, right?
No. Forget what that one's like. Let's see.
Pinson doesn't really end up very high in any of these models.
Oh, he's not only got 66 defense in center, where he's 100 in left and 96 in right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's one of kind of those awkward in betweeners where I don't think he's got the kind of classic more the PT22, I guess, really good shape with high BABIP, high avoid K, but lower I.
Yeah.
Kind of the Ichiro school.
And what do you have for Keller in the limit, or is it just too limited to get any number?
I have like 500 plate appearances for him. He's middling so far, but again, yeah, it's a really small number. I wouldn't draw any conclusions.
I think I like Keller and right as well, a little more than left. All right, so who would have gotten the observed data, since most of these are difficult to get, right? Keller and Galen just came out. Abreu's a limited edition, although he will fit Fycross's Philly theme team. So the winner of the observed data is actually Ducky, and this has got to be a platoon bat, right? He's incredibly splitty, but should be excellent if you can play him just against lefties. And then otherwise, kind of the cards we've talked about, right? Guerrero, Abreu, something like that.
Yeah.
Sounds about right. Okay, and then if you're going to run a platoon, right? What do we get for a Warbot platoon? Well, even though he's not in the top 10 overall, take a look at what Ryan Braun gives you against lefties.
Yeah, those are nuts.
Yeah, you got 107 power, you got 100 contact, you got 100 gap power.
That guy just puts Bob Bailey to shame.
He does.
No one puts Bob Bailey to shame. You take that
even,
back.
even the
Bob Bailey is
75 Bob,
shameless.
not only the 74, he puts the 75 Bob Bailey to shame.
Well, okay. Anyone puts 74 to shame.
Yeah, so I think this is where, if you've got enough lefties, you should consider something like Ryan Braun if available, right?
Yeah, and I actually, spoiler alert again, but I picked up a Braun because he wasn't too expensive. He's only around like 30K, I think, L10 for an LE, 100 count LE.
Yeah.
It's not too bad. I was like, whatever, sure.
And so Medwick, he ends up the top of the data. He'd be right behind Braun if you're going to platoon somebody and play him just against lefties, but you really never want him to face a right.
Yeah, he's really close to Braun, but yeah, more of a drop off against right because his eye goes all the way down to 38, which is pretty putrid as far as that's concerned.
All right, so who's our biggest winner, given that all of these cards are difficult to find? It's only at 20%, but it's actually Jason Bay. And
yeah, this was really funny. There's a lot of different left fielders getting played.
And well, it's a completely playable card.
Yeah, no, Jason Bay's great. I think the tournament editions are the only ones that kind of overshadow him. I think for packables, it's pretty darn good.
Yeah, and I think as hard as it is to find one, it's probably easier to find than some of these others. So we're going to make him our shoestring budget award here too, which I think maybe just says something about how hard it is to find some of these tournament cards.
Yeah. No kidding.
So, if you've got Pedro and Bay, you're in pretty good shape, I think. All right, so who are we actually running? Well, I did manage to luck my way into a Keller in one of these perfect drafts. So I'm running Keller and Ducky as my platoon. And you're just mashing with Pedro Guerrero, it looks like?
Yeah, that's was my other lucky tournament reward win. And I just want to get him in the lineup as much as possible.
And I think left field might be the best place to play him. Like, of the different options, I think left field might be the best place for Pedro.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's just, arguably, definitely a top 5 bat. So if you just assume that you got to get him in the lineup, yeah, it's probably going to be our best option.
Yeah, and it's great that he does play 5 positions, so he's going to give you a lot of roster flexibility. But, like with a card like Hera or something, you don't really want to play him at all 5 of those positions. Right?
Well, I mean, you want to, but you can't.
Sorry, maybe what I should say is he's not a super... he's not going to be great defensively at all of those positions. You'd like to play him in left or something if possible. But
the man trying to keep us down.
It's true. So if you're not going to play Pedro in center, who do you play in center? Let's see. So the model actually, after all this, still likes some of the same cards as before. Jim Edmonds, I think we decided we just call him George Paskert, and even the McTammany silver card with all of that eye seems to play up a little bit in gold. But really, the model finds that it's super flat, and there's a really tiny gap between probably the first 20 or so options here, and it's going to come much more down to roster construction than anything else. You could even play a card like the silver Adam Jones and just go complete defense, or kind of anything in between.
Yeah, I would love to get my hands on that Jones card.
Like I said, there are about 20 options here. So this is one where the model's just telling you it's really flat, and other considerations come in. So in the data, this is where Pinson does jump to the top in the data. Also, this Willie Wilson. Hack Wilson, I think we got to talk about if he's really playing center, right? I mean, the bat's great.
He can't be.
No.
The bat
Not
is
with that
great.
war anyway.
Uh,
I would
Yeah.
believe that he has like some less than 10% of those plate appearances are playing defense at center field because, you know, someone's got him backing up or whatever on one side.
Pretty wild how things went wrong in that family. You know, Willie Wilson was such a good fielder, and then his brother Hack just not doing so hot.
yep.
Well, it's because, you know, you don't need two people doing the same thing in the same household, right? They diversified their skill sets.
Yeah, pretty much did the exact opposite things.
There you go. It's like the which is the quote they have about, you know, people not being able to tell Brooks and Frank Robinson apart
Yeah.
Yeah, one of
in the loading screen.
what was
Or
it about
maybe
the
it's
number?
like a Dr. Jekyll and Hyde thing where, you know, by day, mild mannered
Comes
singles
up.
hitting Willie Wilson, and then, you know, nighttime comes around. It's hack time, baby.
To be fair, have you ever seen them in the same place at the same time?
You know, if I was named Willie Wilson and I had an alter ego that just mashed home runs, I'd seriously consider the name Hack. I think it's appropriate.
It's a
It is.
sick nickname.
It's a great,
The
it's a
story
great
is
name.
coming. The story is coming together.
But unfortunately, I think Hack Wilson's going to have sort of is not going to have the range you're looking for in center, right?
Looking, Hack Wilson
Or anywhere,
died
frankly.
he died in 1948, and Willie Wilson was born in 1955. So that's pretty convenient, if you ask me. That you know, alibi.
Yeah, it's true.
I have not seen them in the same place at the same time.
Let's see.
It's got to be a coincidence.
If you're gonna run a platoon, you can platoon Edmonds and Paskert, but again, it's really flat for all these top ones. So it comes down a lot more to kind of your roster construction. Let's see. Biggest winner is Jim Edmonds. He's on 30% of rosters. We can also make him the budget pick because he's cheap. So
He also plays in modern era tournaments.
he does.
He also plays in snapshots. He's just a good card to have.
So who are we actually running
it's a
here? Let's see. Even with all these 20 choices, I'm just running Edmonds and Paskert, and yeah, so are you. So
Yeah, I mean, if it's not broke, I'm not going to fix it.
no, makes it
Edmonds is
simple.
those are just make a great platoon, and Dode also can back up left, Mr. George. So
I would love to have a Willie Wilson, but I don't. So
yeah,
I think I won
Yeah,
one
again,
early
haven't-
on, and then like tried to play the card, never made it work, and then I think I just gave up and sold it. Let me see. No, you know what? I didn't sell it. I've got a Willie Wilson. I never figured out how to play. So if anybody wants a Willie Wilson, let me know off stream. We'll make a deal.
and I'll say really close in the observed data, right behind them is Marquis Grissom and
Marquise Grissom,
yeah,
thank you.
Marquise,
Sorry,
yeah.
I was trailing off here.
Don't like him.
Mike Grissom, Mark Grissom, and yeah, he's really close behind. His bat is very not great, but
Well, I
his glove
assume that's
is.
because he's going to be splitty. So he's a really good platoon bat, given the defense you get. But you've got a platoon Grissom, I think.
Yeah, I would consider him and Edmonds to be a pretty fun platoon too. I think I've gone with Paskert because he can be a little more flexible.
I think the other card that Warbot really likes is Bill North, because you get defense and you get eye, and you know, really, are there any other ratings that matter?
Yeah, Bill North is just about almost the exact same as Paskert overall in WAR and like on base in the observed data. So yeah, not a bad one.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to go. My brain just spit out Bill North, the science Gorth, and I think that's. I'm done for today.
Oh no.
Anyway, all right, let's go to. I think that sounds like we should go on to right field.
Yeah.
Right field, good. Where, as you mentioned, the top three are going to look pretty similar here. The model likes Abreu a little more as the right fielder, and Keller a little more as the left fielder. But they're both great. If you got them both, you're running them both. Rocky Colavito's got a huge bat. You know, especially if you're going to platoon him, maybe Abreu and Rocky. What do we got in the data? Let me see. Actually, pretty similar, except we got Sox in here.
Yeah, that Sox is another just really awesome card that I never got my hands on.
Yeah, that he's also, you know, a really good bunter. He's kind of not splitty, so you can run him both ways. The one thing I didn't like about that card is it only plays right. And so that makes it a little tough to construct a roster, I think.
Yeah, almost all of these cards have at least left field eligibility too.
Yeah, Rocky's passable versus right, but you're losing 20 points of I, right? And that's a huge gap.
Good question from Vicarious. Where is Juan gone?
I don't know where Juan's gone, but
he left.
He's not in the top 25.
Juan
He has not gone to
went
the
to go
Bronx.
find that ball that bounced off his head over the left field wall, and he hasn't come back yet.
Let's see. Yeah. So
he's-
Warbot's model, if you were to go past the top three, Sox ends up fourth. Then the new Tim Salmon, which probably is a
Yeah, that's a
platoon
really
bat.
cool card.
Chuck Klein, you know, someone was mentioning him in stream. He ends up there. Baines, you know, the limited edition, which, you know, plays in silver, of course, also, but should be a platoon bat. Selkirk, Pedro Guerrero, you can play Bobby Bonds there. If you're a big Orioles fan, you could even play Brady Anderson.
You'd have to be a really big Orioles fan to play Brady Anderson.
Yeah. You're not even playing J.J. Hardy, are you?
I mean, I haven't registered for. Well, no, that's not true. I'm playing the Wakey Wakey. I probably am still playing JJ Hardy.
The other card that I really thought would be better is the Shin-Soo Choo that just came out. And Warbot at least just really doesn't seem to think that card's going to work.
And he was one of my favorite players of his era.
Yeah.
I couldn't even tell you why. Maybe his name was just fun to say.
I really think so.
Let's see.
Get on the Shin-Soo Choo train.
Choo.
Yeah, Juan Gun in the observed data, he's got a great WOBA, but his almost the worst on base. He doesn't ever get walks, but he hits home runs. So,
But he doesn't get
pretty
on,
much,
he doesn't get
yeah.
on base.
I mean, he gets on the bases just long enough to cross all of them and then go back home because he hit a home run. But he doesn't stand there. So
It's true. Yeah, you know, you need a base trotting rating, basically.
yeah, he's kind of a liability on the base pass otherwise. So
Let's see. If you're going to platoon, then Abreu is even better if you're able to platoon him. And this is where you should take a look at the Tim Salmon that's now available. Right? So I think there are a bunch of these really good platoon bats, and maybe that's the reason. So we didn't talk about this with roster construction in the infield, but you may have noticed that we're both kind of running the same players both way and not platooning the infielders. I guess you're doing the same thing, right? Just kind of realizing that there are so many incredible splitty outfield bats that you almost want to use all your platoons there.
yeah, I think there's probably 7 or 8 guys on my roster that can play the outfield. Not playing them all in the outfield, but yeah, the quality of their bats is just
Let's see.
a big difference. Yeah,
So Salmon's also kind of fun because it's a slightly more complicated split. He's mostly a lefty masher, but he actually has a little more gap power versus righties, so you can play him both ways. Yeah, no sales on him so far, so I guess we don't know what he's actually going to go for. Let's see, who's our biggest winner here? I guess it's again going to be none of these difficult to get cards, right? So it is. Oh, that makes sense. It's the build a lineup Larry Walker.
yeah. That one, I don't know. I guess people are just I kind of had him in my lineup, just kind of forget about him for a while. he's not bad. He's just pretty much dead center average.
Yeah.
Um,
So budget,
I-
another budget pick. So this was a little tough again because it's just so hard to get a lot of these top cards, right? Abreu doesn't exist anymore. Keller barely exists. Colavito doesn't exist anymore. Sox doesn't exist anymore. Salmon barely exists. But if you're willing to go with a splitty bat and just accept kind of the bad side of the platoon, there's a packable Chuck Klein that absolutely crushes righties. And also plays really solid right field defense. You get 107 arm in right field out of him, which I think is that the most we've seen? I'm trying to remember. There was even like the Platinum Clemente is only in the 90s, right?
yeah, I want to say maybe I think that Kiermaier card has like really high arm.
Adam Jones, sorry, the silver Adam Jones has 104. That's the one that I was looking for.
Only Ellis Burks, the Diamond Ellis Burks is higher. He's got a 108 arm.
That's a cannon, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah,
So-
Klein's second after that, then Adam Jones, and then King Kelly actually.
who you're probably using that you're probably using his cannon behind the plate though.
Yeah, you kind of want him throwing out guys from behind the plate, not by the fence.
So all right, who are we actually running here? So I mentioned I was running Keller sort of as a split platoon. So I'm platooning Colavito and then Keller. And you actually are running. Oh, I see. You're running Klein and Braun. So you've got the huge bat both ways.
Yeah, and I do really like that Klein card. I think for me it was pretty much just plug and drop Larry Walker. Like pretty much, I feel like he's kind of a direct upgrade.
Yeah, I think he's a huge upgrade
Obviously-
over Walker.
It's not as much in the BABIP department, but everything else, just a great card.
But I think the BABIPs, I think that's not quite the way to look at it because the contact is really the same. So what that's saying is you've kind of redistributed a lot, and the gap is the same. So that basically says you've redistributed a lot of his singles and turned them into home runs.
Yeah.
And, I'm no expert, but I think that's a good trade.
And he doesn't strike out as much, so
Well, you can't have everything.
yeah.
All right. Yeah, Ryan Braun, yeah, the defense is maybe passable and right. And if you're willing to use a spot for a platoon bat, he's going to rake.
And Brown is also arm heavy on the defense, so I don't mind him in right, even though his range is not great.
Yeah. All right. And then finally, I guess we talked about a lot of the players at other positions, but what are you doing at DH? So for the model, the way we've done it is just to kind of take the top bats that weren't already going to play other positions. So there are going to be some better bats that we've got listed elsewhere. But the top three bats that we don't necessarily have starting elsewhere are Eddie Matthews, Tim Salmon, and Hack Wilson. With several other good options that we've talked about. The Tulowitzki would make a lot of sense there, for example, especially if you're going to platoon him. And then for the observed data, you're actually using cards that are being run at DH, right? So that's going to include some people that are also the top at other positions.
Yeah, we're trying to look at. I have it kind of filtered by how many innings they're playing in the field per like their plate appearances. So these are guys who are, at least sometimes being used at DH. They're
Okay.
They're not only out in the field.
And so this makes sense. So we've got, you've got Ducky, who really should be a platoon bat, but is going to be an excellent one. We've got Hack, I think it's just clearly going to be an excellent bat. Pedro Guerrero, as we were talking about, probably you'd rather play the field, but certainly the bat's going to be great. Let's
Yeah,
see.
I mean, Pedro would be good I like the flexibility of having Pedro. You can have him at DH, and then he can back up a lot of spots. So that can also be a nice strategy since your DHs don't get as tired.
Yeah, I could see
You
that.
might be able to get more appearances out of him that way.
And then if you're going to run a platoon here, this is one of these positions where, because you're just looking at the bat, you probably don't get the same options if you're running a platoon. And yeah, the best option versus left is this Tulo. And then Fred McGriff comes out. I think we had looked at this card before too, right? That if you're willing to run him just as a platoon bat, I mean, you're getting 100 power and 89 eye, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's a good question. Are you willing to use 2 roster spots in order to get a DH?
Well, we can answer that if we look at my choice.
All right, that's all right. All right, fair enough. We'll go down there. All right, so biggest winner, by the way, Hack Wilson. If you're on a budget, well, you can still go for Hack Wilson. It's just a great bat, right?
Hack across the board, man. This is his time to shine.
So, all right, what are we running here? I'm running Hack and Tulo. I actually am willing to use the roster spots because I think the bats are just so good. And I think the meta is close enough to 50-50 that I'm willing to use a roster spot on the weak side of the platoon. And you're just running Hack both ways, it looks like?
Hammering away with Lewis Wilson, yeah.
Yep.
His birth name was not Hack either. I'm sorry to break it to anyone who was hoping otherwise.
But yeah. The picture makes him look like it, you know. Doesn't he just have a face that looks like Hack?
He looks like a Hack. Oh my god. The Wikipedia picture of his baseball card, he looks like Woody Harrelson on steroids.
All right, so kind of any last thoughts on hitters before we see if we can get some of them out?
I just wanted to shout out Hack Wilson.
All right, and hey, we said we're going to finish this in 2 hours, so if we can do the pictures in 15 minutes, we're good.
We're making good time.
All right, let's do some pitching then. All right, we'll begin with the starters. So, you know, kind of as before, this is something where there's often a bigger difference between the model and the data. To a large extent because the sample sizes, where the model's really trying to kind of predict sort of FIP and long-term things, and the data are going to be affected a lot by the defense you put behind them and usage and things like that. But generally what the model is telling us is there are a lot of hitters with a ton of power here. You should be running pitching with a ton of movement. So, you know, kind of the gold Kevin Brown. It's a Kevin Brown, so you know that's going to be at the top. But mostly that's the shape we're looking at, right? Let's see, McGee and Altrock are new, right? Osteen and
Nick Smooth Jazz.
What?
Nick Smooth Jazz.
Nick Smooth Jazz?
Yeah. More genre-based pitchers.
Yep. You know, Osteen and Pettit. You don't have a lot of data on Pettit, it looks like. They've been around longer. Falkenberg, that's new, right? Am I remembering correctly?
I believe so, yeah. Mm-hmm. Where's Red Donahue at? I think he would probably be one that Warbot likes.
Yeah. And one of the things you notice here is that generally these are all pitchers that have a really high BABIP. They're getting let down by their defense a little bit and have higher ERAs than FIPS. As for the model, that's the model's doing. As for the data have a few different shapes in there, right? They also have Lefty Gomez and Mario Soto, who have kind of a completely different shape and are going to give up some homers. The FIPS are probably in a comparable range, I'd say, between the model and the data. But there's a huge difference in BABIP.
Yeah, I think maybe the way gold is right now, there's not as many. Might not be running as many like huge power bats. Besides Hack, most of the ones are closer to 90 power would be a lot rather than 124. So I think there's a little more flexibility where it in a totally optimized lineup, I think the high movement guys would be best, but against your average kind of what you're seeing out there,
Yeah.
it ends up not kind of coming out the same way.
You're asking about Red Donahue. That's kind of a new card as well. That one ends up 12th in the starters in the model, but has the highest stamina of anybody but Altrock. So if you're trying to run a little shorter pen, then maybe he jumps to the top. And if you look at WAR instead of kind of WAR per innings pitched, then Donahue, because of that stamina, will jump up a little bit.
And I saw a question about Tin Cup, who's unfortunately one of the worst in the observed data currently. But a lot of that's coming from people using him as a starter, and he's extremely splitty.
Yeah, he and Osteen are both incredibly splitty.
So they fare a lot better out of the pen. Definitely, Tin Cup's actually I would be perfectly fine recommending him as a bullpen arm, but you do not want him starting games, it seems.
The limited edition Rube ends up 14th in the model. So high movement, but a little lower than some of the ones on this list. High stuff, low control.
Yeah, and Rube just misses the list on the observed data too. He's about 12th. And we're looking at all these guys, the cutoff was 1,500 batters faced. So it's not a huge sample size to, maybe Lefty Gomez is getting lucky, but, significant.
Yeah. Let's see. All right, and just a couple. If you're really confident that you can play the opener games right and you can get the matchup you want, you can't do too much better than Tin Cup and Osteen on their good sides. But you notice most managers aren't getting them on their good sides because they have ERAs that are quite a bit higher. I think the other thing that's worth pointing out is, for whatever reason, Gold is the level that has a lot of reverse split guys. And I don't know how much this is something you look at. I look at this a lot when constructing rosters because it just kind of gives me a lot more flexibility. If I'm going to run openers, maybe I'll run them on one side and then, run reverse split guys or something like that. Is this something you look at a lot in roster construction?
My general strategy is usually get reverse split guys to open, since I assume those guys are probably going to be facing reverse, their opposite-handed batters more than starters. So yeah, I think obviously if they're good, they're good. You can put them in as a regular starter or bullpen, but I do think that there's a bit of an advantage to those guys as openers specifically.
Yeah, so I guess you only get sort of half of the advantage because, if you get a splitty batter, the batter still kind of is getting their advantage against that pitcher, right? Which actually feels like the kind of thing that isn't so realistic. Like, if a lot of your advantage is you throw a screwball and the breaking ball moves the other way, I would think that actually you shouldn't get the same splits for the hitter either.
Yeah, it's Mr. Black brings up a good point too. There are in Gold, especially. There's definitely more cards that are righties who just crush lefties rather than the other way around. So yeah, it's always a little. It's hard, and besides Candelaria, who's obviously one of the most popular and enduring cards in Gold. I'm a little more hesitant to throw lefties out there.
It depends.
Unprotected,
also,
right?
Yeah, it depends also like how many, say, Eddie Matthews or something like that you're going to see in your tournament. But there are several really good options here. You know, Alt Rock has a reverse split. Sad Sam's got a reverse split. Mitchell has one. There are a few others down the list. You could run 5 of them if you wanted, pretty easily, I think.
Yeah, I feel better about the righties with the reverse split. Like Sad Sam is probably my favorite card in this format.
Earl Hamilton, I think, has one, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and Earl Ham is a lefty, so
Yep. All right, so what are we actually running? Sorry, right. First, biggest winners, right? So this is kind of mostly the packables plus Kevin Brown. But we see Sad Sam right up there at the top. And I think that's for the reasons you were mentioning. It just kind of that card fits for almost anything you're doing, right?
yeah, he's just like, I don't know, he's pretty much your average, right? What was
Yeah.
you should have the stats of like the average pitcher in the first slide here. I think he's about as close to that kind
He's
of.
almost exactly the average pitcher. Yeah, I think that's right.
This is what an ideal gold pitcher looks like.
Makes sense.
May not like it.
You may not. Well, I do like it though, so I'm not even gonna.
You know, I like it better than the average silver pitcher. Yeah, so Mr. Black, that's a good point too. That sort of, you know, the money rounds are where you're going to start to see some of these stronger builds. And so maybe, you know, it's a good question whether you optimize a little bit for that. All right, budget picks. Let's see what we got here. Well, I think pretty much all the ones we talked about are available as budget picks too. You know, there are a lot of good packables. We threw the Kevin Brown in there, even though he's not cheap if you sort of buy him directly, just because it's a mission that most teams running gold are going to be able to at least get up to the gold Kevin Brown. And then what are we doing here? So I'm running a pretty Warbot-like thing, except I am willing to run Osteen and just play whatever opener games I need to try to make that work. I don't do that with Mitchell. Mitchell, I'm happy to just kind of let him face whatever. But I am running both Osteen and Pettit. And what are you doing here?
I've got, it's not too different from what we were talking about here, but I use, I don't know, I wasn't sold on Foster. I think I'm probably switching it out for someone else, but Candelaria I use as a follower, just to try to avoid, you know, if they got guys like Braun and Hack up in the very top of the order, I'd rather have them going against a righty.
Yeah, there were a couple control options I wanted to see. Like, I think the one I was most disappointed by was that Hilton Smith ended up being 90 instead of 89. Because I would have been excited about trying to run him, especially out of the pen. That's kind of just a perfect shape.
For his control rating?
Yeah, I really wanted to try running that with some of the higher I cards coming out.
Oh, I see.
But anyway, but it looks like we're actually doing something pretty similar, except that, you know, you're willing to run a card like Candelaria, and I'm just kind of afraid of the movement there.
Yeah, that's what I've been thinking. You know, besides Hack, you know, I think I turned the pitch around slider up more than average almost always. So if I can get around, you know, I'm assuming that I'm going to go against a lineup with 1 or 2 big power bats and not just a stacked lineup of, you know, Matthews.
Yeah,
Hack,
and if you're
Braun,
going
et
to
cetera.
run, because I guess if you're going to run. Because the problem is, if you're going to do that with Candelaria, he doesn't really have the control. So that's why I like Hilton Smith, is that I could have really just turned the pitch around all the way up, try to keep the ball in the ballpark, and then you're going to do really well.
Yeah, I think there's some cards that are good for that, like the Bob Nepper special edition.
Yeah,
Preacher Rose
that's one
kind
that
of
just
that
misses
way.
the top 10 in the model as well, and is pretty high up there on the data. All right, and how about the bullpen? Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say Preacher Rose is kind of close to Candelaria too in that his shape, except that he's got more control. So
Yeah, so I think if you're more control, but it's only 54 movement, so it's a pretty big.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. What about relievers? What do we got there? So, okay, so the model, again, the model. Hold on, that's the wrong way. That's the wrong place to put relievers. That's the right place to put relievers. So again, the model, really thinks you got to emphasize movement here. And there's a new number 1, which is the newly released Ramon Hernandez. Maybe even better as a lefty specialist, but probably good enough movement to play against righties as well. We don't have a lot of data on a few of these new ones, right? We don't have data on the new Merker. Gorman, I guess, is no longer really available, but he's cheap if you can find one. I think I picked one up for $6K or something, and I've been running him. And then you got some of these packables and even lives, right?
And the lives, yeah, Scott Efros, wow.
Yep. And Sir Anthony Dominguez is also pretty close here as a live. And then what do you got in the data? So for the data, you've got a lot more converted starters, it looks like. And that seems to be the shape that people are running.
Yeah, and what we're looking at here is the stats. I separated the stats this time, so these are their stats purely as relievers,
Okay.
or at least they're filtered by, having 0 games started. So, we're assuming these guys they're not openers and they're not starters. These guys are just coming in relief. They could be followers too.
Fabtron, you're saying Ramon has just been blasted. I hope he's at least not giving up home runs, because if so, then something's wrong.
Yeah, it's interesting because, he seems, I guess because Clarence Mitchell gets a little bit of a stuff boost. It wouldn't be much, but it seems like he should be very, very close to Mitchell in the results. So
Yeah.
Hopefully a small sample size.
Yeah, and it's funny that with the two different shapes, well, I guess maybe the biggest difference is still that kind of in the sample size, these are relievers that all have really low BABIPs. So, I'm not sure how much of this is sustainable, but at the same time, Harden's got a 387 FIP, right? So some of this is going to be durable as well.
Be a bit of a chicken egg problem too, because a lot of them have lower BABIPs because they have higher stuff and they're more fly ball. Not too many ground ballers in there. Although Arrieta is a ground ball pitcher and he's just been crushing it from the pen. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Let's see. And then if you did want to look at a specialist, I think more so than the starters, it's worth thinking about that. We'll just mention a couple specialists here. This live Tim Hill is still just absolutely incredible versus lefties. If Loogies still existed, you'd want him on every roster. And this Kent Tekulve, this is a guy I remember as a kid, with kind of a funny motion, like I guess like a Chad Bradford type, right?
Yeah, Brad Chadford.
And hey, he fits again in your Phillies theme team, right?
Ford Chad Brad?
Yeah.
How's the Phillies theme team looking for pitchers? Not as good as with the hitters.
No, but you could definitely run Teak there.
There's that. We're talking about the special Red Donahue that would work, and
yeah,
that's about it.
No, you can run the Papelbon too.
Oh, the Gold Papelbon's Boston.
Yeah, but I think that counts, right?
Sure.
So, where did the 81 Aroldis Chapman fall in all this?
Oh my God! He's way down.
He's going to be pretty far down. Let me see.
Yeah, I mean more about won't like him because he doesn't have control and like the movement isn't sufficient to make up for it.
It is true that the
top
observed
25, but give me a moment and I'll keep running.
In the observed data, he has by far the highest walks of anyone, the highest walk rate, but also the most strikeouts. So he's pretty much the Aroldis Chapman that you expect.
Let's see, not in the top 50, but actually there's a little better version in the live Devin. The live Devin Williams is kind of a better version of that card, right? 148 stuff, 100 movement, 38 control. But the 38's a lot bigger control. Sorry, Mike, what were you saying?
Oh, just I find it comforting that Aroldis Chapman is who you expect him to be.
He is who we thought.
I don't know. Sometimes in this game, cards just like don't play like the players you remember.
Yeah.
So
that's
it's nice when they do.
Yeah, I think just in general, the pitchers, again, there's not as much of a huge gap with the like rare tourney SEs and stuff. Like a lot of them are good, but none of them are head and shoulders above the normal cheap packables. So there's a lot of budget options. You can run a lot of different things depending on your lineup construction. You know, some things will be better options, but it's not a huge rocket science.
So the Brian, we got a question about the Brian Wilson. Do you mean the silver Brian Wilson is excellent for silver and probably, vaguely playable. And then there's a gold Brian Wilson that actually somehow might not be as good as the silver.
It's pretty low. Out of, let's see, I got like 59 qualified relievers. He's about 40th in like FIP and opposing MOBA. So, yeah, he had the Beach Boys. I mean, that was good enough.
Yeah.
I think the 87 Brian Wilson was in the Beach Boys. I don't know about the silver one.
Yeah. I was trying to come up with it with some kind of Pet Sounds pun, and I just couldn't find it. So.
You'll be making Pet Sounds if you play Brian Wilson. And by Pet Sounds, I mean whimpers.
All right, so let's see what we're running. All right, here we go. Relief pitchers here. Let's see. Budget relievers.
That was a bit of a reach.
But budget relievers, pretty much all the guys we talked about are available. So you almost just dump a list in. Any of the relievers we're talking about is accessible at this point. So who are we actually running? So we're each running 7. So I guess I'm running, several fairly splitty people and a lot of specialists is kind of been my plan. Don't know whether that's really an excellent plan, but it's kind of worked okay. You notice in particular, someone like Knowles was really high on all of our lists, including the observed. So it looks like, for whatever reason, you can run him as a specialist. And then what are you doing? You're running some more balanced people, right? Are you running no specialists or?
Yeah, I don't think I have anyone in this pen set as a specialist. Again, I might after talking to today, I might want to switch one or two of these guys out, but they're again, no one's like too off the charts, bunkers where I'd say you have to run them. Yeah. I really like Arrieta's been great. Arrieta and Harden have been looking really good in the recent observed data.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm definitely running them. The new, other one I wanted to mention was the new John Lester Platinum Series 1. Kind of a small sample size, but he seems to be really good out of the pen as well.
So that was one of the ratings I questioned the most here.
Wasn't he good out of the pen in real life too? Am I remembering that wrong?
Not 2013 at least. But the rating I got to question as a Red Sox fan is he has a 15 hold runners rating. Now
I was wondering about that.
Isringhausen had a 1 hold runners rating somehow. This card has a 15 hold runners rating. For a player that think spent something like 5 years between throws to first base.
Yeah, I cranked his hold runner slider all the way up just to inflict.
He was the guy with like the
psychological
ridiculous
torture on him.
yips.
There was something
Just, like,
where
physically couldn't throw to
he just
first.
would not throw over to first for quite a while, right? And I think with the Cubs, he eventually started to throw over to first again.
I think he did once, and it was like way off target, and then he didn't do it again.
Yeah, he was like the Rick Ankiel of throwing to first base.
Yeah. And the weird thing was that he would never throw over to first base, and people didn't just automatically run on him, which I don't understand. You know.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. Who was
If they're too obvious about it, he can throw to second base.
I guess. But I mean, I feel like if you're an opposing manager, right, at some point you just sort of say, like, you know, you're taking a big enough lead that you're either stealing second or throwing over to first base. At least make him pick you off once, right?
Sure. Just dare him to throw.
That's what I would do.
I mean, they had Gerard Saltalamacchia behind the plate during most of his career, I
they
think.
had a few different.
Or Miguel Montero when he was on the Cubs, I guess.
He had this guy, question mark?
I was just thinking, you know, maybe people weren't running on him because he always had good catchers, but
yeah, but if
really.
you know what, if you take a big enough lead, I mean, if you give me a 40-foot lead, I can steal second base on any catcher, right?
Yeah.
All right. So, any last thoughts on gold? I know we were trying to wrap this one up a little quicker tonight. We almost did it.
Pretty good, I gotta say. We're making good time.
No,
I don't understand. Gold's a nice. It's fine. It's there. You can do it.
I don't have the energy to go track down like another wave of better tournament edition cards.
Yeah, I think it's again just one of those things where it's like it's fun if you win one of those. You know, if you.
Yeah.
It's a nice consolation prize. If you
right. Isn't Lester's velocity on the card listed as 99 to 101?
Yeah, that's wild.
Is it? Oh, it is. Wow. Okay, that's also.
Yeah, that's
a little higher than I remember.
Maybe factually incorrect.
It's a little higher than I remember.
I mean, isn't it great when cards play the way you remember them in real life? It's just so good. It's comforting, man.
You jinxed it when you said that.
As we all know, notorious fireballer.
Maybe they were confusing it like the speed of his neck turning to first base. I don't know.
Oh, are you saying, is this like the theory that he didn't have to throw over to first base because his neck turned so fast?
Yeah, that we never actually.
We never basically.
I'll admit it does have to be weird because you got a lefty pitching out of the stretch, right? The guy's looking right at you. There's a limit to how much of a lead you want to take, even if you know he's not throwing over, I guess, right?
Oh, for sure. And like, some of that has got to be muscle memory, right? Like, you're just like, everything in your head is screaming, like, no, you can't. You're giving yourself up. You can't do this.
Exactly.
Those fun reminders of how much baseball is like psychological and like.
Oh yeah.
Almost superstitious, more so than like just pure physical skill. It takes some different ways of thinking to play baseball. So
but I think as for gold, I mean, I don't think it's my favorite format because it feels like it just takes too many cards to get into. That even having one or two of the key cards isn't really enough. But that also means that maybe the manager pool isn't as deep as you'd like it to be.
And one of the pieces of good news is that a number of, at least this used to be the case, and from what I've gleaned from this stream, if it wasn't clear by now, I'm not like tremendously knowledgeable about this format. But a lot of the expensive tournament edition cards that you might want to accumulate over time to play this format will play in a number of cap formats. So it's not like you have to get them all at once, or they're not worth anything to you, right? Like there are other things that you can do with some of these cards in the meanwhile.
That's true, and
Yeah, you
a
don't.
lot of these will play low diamond as well.
Oh, absolutely.
You mean extra high gold?
That is,
Basically,
I think
yeah,
that is pretty
high
much
gold.
what I mean. Yeah.
And really,
I'm sorry,
just
very high gold and Ken Griffey Jr.
high silver or high gold. Yeah.
All right, we'll take anyway. Maybe we'll get to take that one up next week. So.
Yeah, get in the requests on the Warbot Discord or
Yeah, we have a Discord now.
this out.
Yep.
It's still very much a work in progress, but it exists.
And as usual, thanks again to everyone. And if you have any requests, let us know. If you have any requests that are backed up with data, really let us know.
We are very happy to, even if it's a format that you've completely made up, if you have sufficient data and can describe the format so that Warbot can get into it without a full-time job worth of time sorting it out.
We'll try.
We can probably do it. We'll do it.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks again, DV, for joining us, and we'll
Does
see
anyone
y'all
have?
next week.
I was gonna let people ask questions for a minute or two,
Oh,
since
sorry.
we're
Any
actually
more?
finishing super on time. It's possible that nobody has questions because
You have to make sure we don't finish on time. Is that the?
We've explained everything so thoroughly. I can't imagine.
I mean, it's possible.
What I will do while you're doing that is there anyone we can raid? Let me remember to do that correctly this time.
Good question.
Yeah. Looks like there is one we can raid. All right, I'm gonna get a raid set up while.
Sounds
Best
good.
live gold. That's a good question. I think Warbot likes that Scott Efros.
Efros, I think, makes a lot of sense
nice.
for a pitcher. Live hitter,
That's a harder
live
question.
bats don't really play until you get to low iron, unfortunately. I guess that's not entirely true. Historically, you've had the odd catcher in silver and bronze that show up, but the quality of catchers we're getting in those tiers has improved dramatically this year, so it's not as much the case.
No, I think
top-
if you were
the
playing a
top
live
five-
only tournament, well, actually, the Alejandro Kirk is a pretty good bat now at low gold.
Mm.
Maybe Devers is a one-way bat.
The best by WAR with a decent sample size is Julio Rodriguez, the right fielder. But
because you get the
he's-
glove. Yeah.
he's really far down there. So yeah, don't play it. Like
the best, and this isn't saying much.
Pretty much.
Yes, he's the least worst.
All right, I think I got the raid
Fair
figured
enough.
out. Let me see if this works. It
We're gonna go on an
So-
adventure. If you have not gotten your full complement of drops, it looks like the streamer that we are rating also has drops enabled. So stick around. I mean, you should stick around anyway because
should be fun, and
we're here to support the community.
and then we get some all stars in a few hours.
And then
Yeah,
all of our data
and with
becomes
any luck-
obsolete again.
With any luck, they'll invalidate everything we've just said.
It's the usual plan. All right, sounds good. See y'all next week, and thanks again, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Keep Benson.
I think did that work on the raid?
Yep. I don't know. Yeah, I closed out.
And now
Great
hold
success.
on. I have to just figure out how to end stream.